Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the session with Vaughn on creative problem solving. You're approaching your next project and you have a tight deadline, you're feeling uninspired, you have to come up with a good idea, or even better, a great one. How do you approach this dilemma? What tactics can help you discover clever and unexpected concepts? In this session, Vaughn will go over some time-tested methods that'll help you solve problems creatively. Of course, we wouldn't be here today without our awesome sponsors. This session's featured sponsor is Spectrum Reach, and I'm going to invite Melissa back to the stage with us for a short speaker featured minute. All right, welcome back, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Spectrum Reach is proud to sponsor this next section. Like Vaughn, we believe that creative problem solving is the key to any effective ad campaign. We work diligently with our customers to help them solve for their own client goals, whether it is increased sales, exploring a new market, or finding out a new product launch. We work with our internal teams to find our current customers, reach new potential customers, and then measure our campaign success. We work every day to help our customers succeed in their campaigns. And we stand ready to help you explore any creative problem-solving sessions that you would like to explore with us. Thank you, Lee, and I'm very interested to hear what the next session has to teach me.
Thank you, Melissa. All right, so a little about our speaker today. If you missed it yesterday, he gave a great workshop on Illustrator. Vaughn is the creative director of Glitschka Studios, a small two-person boutique design firm located in the Pacific Northwest. Their diverse range of illustrative designs is sought after by some of the most respected brands in the world. They creatively collaborate with ad agencies, design firms, in-house corporate art departments, and small businesses to produce engaging visual narratives. Vaughn also produces and creates a weekly design series for LinkedIn Learning called Drawing Vector Graphics Laboratory. Vaughn, I'll hand it over to you. If you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Thanks. It's going to be a little clunky to transfer.
Yeah.
Since I'm... Okay. Okay, do you see my screen now?
Yep, good to go.
Okay, great.
Oh, so, sorry, real quick. Don't forget, guys, have your chat window over to the right, and then questions that you have, put them in the questions tab, and we will answer those at the end.
Okay, thank you for having me share this talk with you. It's all about problem solving, creative problem solving, and these are going to be quick and easy design thinking methods that you can take and adapt it to your own workflow. A few of them are from me, of course, but most of them are from other people I interviewed, and you'll be seeing who they are as we go through this. There's some groundwork I need to set before we jump into those, because it all comes down to how you think. We're all familiar with Saul Bass, one of the legendary designers in our industry, and has probably the best quote regarding design, and that is, design is thinking made visual. So everything that comes before actually jumping on a computer is going to make or break the entire process. So thinking is a big part of it, and it goes without saying that improved thinking leads to improved creative solutions. I'm going to assume you've done all your research and strategy using a creative brief to gather information. That's one tactic. These are all pretty standard and familiar with most of you watching this. By the way, if you see me look over here, this is my cheat monitor that shows me what's coming up, because I'll get way off track if I don't use it. So I use creative briefs. This is a simplified one I use mostly with small business. If I'm working for a big firm, they usually provide me with with all of their upfront information and kind of their positioning document that I'll work from. But in this case, when it's a small business, I'll provide this to them. I'm assuming you have something like that in place for your own business or the company you work for. If not, this would be a great place to start. Here's one example of how I use it. So the company came to me, one of the questions is, who are you? And their company at the time was named DFC Mechanical. Doesn't really tell you anything, who they are, what they do. Turns out DFC stood for Dan Foss, that's the owner's name, and C was for company. He just kind of threw the name together. So I knew after reading through the creative brief that needed to be addressed. The project voice, he wanted something friendly, helpful, color preferences. He liked blue and red, and kind of gauging their perception. What have they thought of without telling them, I'm going to just do whatever you want. You don't want that. And for him, it was, he liked brand characters. So the logo is what the branding is, what we came up with on the left. We changed his name to One Stop Pro. I couldn't believe nobody owned that domain, so we got the domain as well. And overnight, we transitioned his whole company to this new brand, vehicle wraps, uniforms, everything. That happened in August of that year. By December of that year, he had already doubled his revenue from the previous year. So as creatives, you can transform small business owners and really help them. Even more so important now than ever because of COVID, obviously. But it comes down to ideas. So I want to help you come up with better ideas. And there's one thing I've noticed over the years when I first started in the industry, and it really kind of, I struggled with it. Like, why is it so hard to come up with that clever eureka moment? Well, I'm going to explain why that is hard and why that is a challenge and why it also brings about fear in the creative process. You've probably run into that before, intimidated by something. So let me walk through this with you. So why am I showing you a lion? And that's actually a lion's roar when he's on the prowl. It's because a lion roars because if he's seeking his next meal, his prey, and he roars, it paralyzes its prey. The prey doesn't act the way it should to save itself. It just freezes in place and becomes the lion's next meal. Well, fear in the context of creativity does the exact same thing. And that's what I want to address here. I want you to be able to embrace the fear because fear in context of the creative process should be expected. And fear comes in many forms. You've heard many common roars of fear. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You know, you're going to fail. Someone else could do this better than you. You should find a new job. You know what, you just suck. Or in context of me giving a talk, it works in any kind of context. Nobody's going to like this talk. So these are common. These are the head games you play with yourself as you approach anything, let alone creativity. But creativity in terms of a deadline can really bring these forward, and you can be intimidated by something you haven't tried. When you approach ideation, when you approach coming up with ideas, your brain is triggering and making all kinds of impulses. And that's what formulates your thought. Now, science has come along and they've categorized those brainwaves into 5 types. You have beta, this is normal consciousness. Hopefully that's the state you're in right now. Otherwise, you might be falling asleep if you find this boring, and that would be the next one. Alpha, this is just prior to falling asleep and just prior to waking up. This is when you dream. Theta, this is your subconscious, and you want to read some really cool books on creativity. Read some of the subconscious advertising books from the 80s. They're pretty interesting how they use that. Delta, this is deep sleep, REM sleep, if you will. But the one I want to focus on is gamma. Gamma is literally a higher mental activity than normal consciousness. It's unsustainable, meaning you can't walk around in gamma mode all day, unless you're a superhero, I guess. But this is the realm of thinking that ideas are formed in. So it's all about going from normal consciousness, which is what I'm in right now, and being able to breach up in that higher level of thinking where you can make those connections to form the ideas to come up with the creative solutions that you need for your projects. So if you've ever wondered, why is it hard to be clever and come up with these concepts? It's because you literally have to work through that struggle. If you're intimidated, just embrace it. We're all intimidated when we try, especially when we try new things, let alone just trying to find that logo design solution for a client you're working on now. So it's about working through that struggle, and you want to get to the point in the creative process where it almost feels like I give up. I'm never going to find that idea, because that means you're right around the corner from having that moment. And sometimes the best way to achieve that, set it aside, do something completely different. Your brain's going to keep spinning on it, and then that idea is going to hit you. So if you've ever been in the shower and you're driving and some idea hits you, that's probably why. You were focusing on it, but now you've taken in all the information and your brain does the rest. So you need to work through the bad to get to the good, is what I'm saying. Fear in context of this really prevents you from reaching that gamma level of thinking and coming up with the idea. So when it comes to fear, just realize it's normal. It's not because you suck or anything like that. That's just the way it works. That's the way our brains work. So embrace the fear, use it as a fulcrum to achieve that creative idea. So once again, embrace the fear. Yes, I'm a Alfred Hitchcock fan. So the first design thinking method I want to go over is the one all of you already know, and you probably do this. This is word association. Whatever the topic or theme is, you start writing down words associated with it. It can be tangential association, it can be a literal association, it can be a figurative association. It's all about mining at this stage. All of these things I'm going to show you aren't about absolutely locking in an idea right away. It's all about mining the possibilities, and then you can refine it later down into a specific direction you want to go. You've all done this. Here's another chart I put together that might help you make other connections. And this is just a simple word association chart. And you have figurative words and phrases, and you have literal words and phrases. And then you just pick what the focus is of your topic. In this case, let's say it's a dog or a pet, and it might be dog food. And so you're trying to come up with some clever messaging for it, or maybe a brand name. You could use this method to kind of go through it. So all you do is pick the different categories. So metaphor, you're in a doghouse. Puns, I have a new leash on life. Idioms, you can teach an old dog new tricks. Hyperbole, my dog is so ugly, his only friend is a cat. Personification, the dog serenaded the moon all night. Emotional, doggone it. Slang, yo dog. Historical, Cerebrus, the hellhound from Roman mythology. Or simple facts, pet, leash, collar. These are those keywords you've already done. So this helps you kind of expand on just simple keywords and start thinking more conceptually of what might tie in or connect with something. And that's how you can lead yourself to find that solution. It might not come immediately, but it's going to help you pop into that level of thinking where you will come up with it. So this all sounds good, but how practical is it? Well, I'm going to show you a practical application of using this kind of thinking to solve a problem with a recent project we worked on. So the first person I want to feature is my daughter. Now, for everybody I feature in this course, I just asked them to give me a sentence I could show with their picture about how they approach ideation or solving a problem. And of course, my daughter kind of got snarky with it and said this: sometimes you have to kickstart the creative process. I often accomplish this by smacking my head on my desk several times till my brain cells start working. So I was going to ask her for a more serious one, but I kept it in. It made me laugh. So what's the example I want to show you? Well, there was this client. Their name was Fair Game. And this is a dating site specifically for hunters and fishers. So we're talking a very niche marketplace here. So some of the keywords we thought up, amongst other ones, are obviously dating, hunting, fishing, and love. But as we started thinking about this, when we got to certain keywords, things are going to pop into your mind. And those are the things you'll want to write down, or those are the things you want to remember, because then you can make one association with something else, and it's going to lead you to an idea. So in this case, I'm thinking hunting. The first thing both me and Savannah thought of was kind of like deer or elk. Those are big hunting game animals. And then, of course, as we're thinking of other things, well, the site's all about kind of love, building a relationship that might lead to marriage, companionship. I thought of fishing poles. Maybe we could bend them into a heart shape, which we actually did, but it was so stupid I didn't pitch that idea. And as we're thinking about this, okay, love, well, what's some mythology around love? Well, you have Cupids, but the thing about Cupids is they have a bow and arrow, and part of hunting is you might have a compound bow and go hunting. I go, well, that's kind of cool. And so Savannah took that and she said, hey, what if we do a deer Cupid? And I'm going, oh, that's a great idea. Okay, move in that direction. That'll be one of the directions we show them. But I love that. Now, when Savannah, and this is the drawing aspect, I always try to work drawing into my talks because it's the best way to explore ideas. And anybody can draw this deer, by the way. This is just a thumbnail sketch. Savannah does all of her drawing digitally on her iPad with an Apple Pencil. I still prefer analog because that's the way I've always done it. And then we'll look at this, review it, and then she'll tighten it up. And so these are the images she'll usually send me if I'm going to build out the vector art. But if she's doing it, she'll place this into Illustrator and build it out. In this case, I build out this, gave away. I built out this direction, and then I usually art direct it to at this stage to improve the readability, etc. Ultimately, when we presented, the direction they went for is the one shown paired with type. But because it stylistically went with the other one, I convinced them they should use this as a secondary brand graphic, and they agreed. So this was kind of the family of brand assets we provided for them: horizontal, vertical format, laid out their business cards. I love the copywriting on this. If you know anything about hunting, trust me, this is funny copywriting. It looks really great on some of the merchandise they're going to do. So they're going to obviously do camo tees, because the couple that hunts together stays together. They do other merchandise as well. So that's how you can practically apply. Actually, all the methods I'm showing you here are very practical. They're not, well, I don't know what to say. They're just practical. Should have thought that out a little better. Okay. Design thinking method 2, mind mapping. Somewhat like keywording, you're writing down words, but it's more about just kind of opening up the floodgate and letting your mind take it to wherever it wants to go, whether it's appropriate or not. Once again, you're mining ideas. You're not trying to refine them at this stage. So there was a local, this was a local small business years ago that I worked on as a tropical fish store. I met the owner through a marketing group, and her branding just wasn't that great. I loved her store. It was fun to go into. So I just told her, hey, I want to help you rebrand your business. And I use mind mapping just to kind of explore the possibilities. The name of her store was okay, wasn't great. So all you do is you start with the central topic and you let your mind explore. So if you're looking at the center and you think tropical fish, that made me think of obviously water, because fish swim in water. I thought of H2O. Okay, that doesn't help. Go back to water. I think of aquatic as a cooler name for water. That made me think of ocean. That made me think of salt water. That made me think of taffy, candy, Swedish fish. Okay, that's a dead end. That's not going to go anywhere. So you go back to the keyword that is working, and you continue just to kind of let your mind wander, and that way you get all kinds of possibilities, but you can focus in on them and figure out, you know what? I like tropical fish because they're derived from different areas of the world, and those different areas have some pretty cool culture. The fish themselves are unique. Some of them are pretty strange. When I thought of culture, I thought of Japan, which made me think of the funny humor they usually have on TV shows. And then I thought, well, this could be fun. This doesn't have to be serious. And then I thought of guppy as another word for a fish. I kind of like that because you don't hear it too often. And then, of course, since I was thinking about history and Japanese culture, I thought of samurai. And then that's where it hit me. I thought, okay, that's what we need to do. And so we came up with the Samurai Guppy, and she loved it. And I created business cards for her. And after 5 months, she came back to me one day at the small business group we were in. And she said, you know, I've been running this business for 15 years, but in the last 5 months, people have asked for my business card more than ever. So I thought that was pretty cool. So simple methods, not complex. If you're not sure where to start, use this as an example. Drop your theme or name of the company or topic in the middle and just ask who, when, where, why, what, and how. So it's not difficult. Anybody can do this. Design thinking method 3, shape association. Now, when it comes to shape association, you've probably, sorry, I have to refer to my notes or I'm going to forget something I want to say. You've probably heard about the Rorschach, I might pronounce that wrong, Rorschach test, where they took ink blots and then they would ask people, what do you see in this? And you get all kinds of crazy things. Now, actually, when I look at this, the first thing I thought was the Predator from the movie Predator. That's what it reminded of. You might see the Batman logo, whatever. The whole point is seeing things that really aren't there. You're just associating it with other things. It's a great way to improve that association methodology in your own skill set. So you've all done this already. Growing up, you probably looked at a cloud and said, hey, that kind of looks like a baby elephant, you know? So we've all done this at one time or another, but it is practical. So if I show you this shape, what would you see in this shape? What could this shape be as this shape? Well, some of you, as you look at this, you might think, well, it could be an eye, yes, but it could be a fish, or it could be maybe a spaceship. Maybe it's a mouth or a leaf. If you're a certain senator, you might think it's an island. It could be a DNA strand. It could be a pea pod. If you're into sports, you might see it as this. It could be pretty much anything you want. What if I said it could be a snake? You're going, how's that a snake? Well, maybe it's its mouth. Or maybe it's a penguin. And you're going, give me a break. That can't be a penguin. Well, maybe he's walking, he slipped and he fallen. So it could be anything you want. Now, I'm being a little humorous here, but a shape association is really a great way to think through concepts when you're working on something. So, for instance, I had to design a mutual fund branding, and the name of the mutual fund was called Commodore. So, of course, I looked up, I kind of knew what Commodore was. I knew it had to do with somebody who was on a ship. And so I looked it up. Well, this is how the Commodore would dress in his uniform when he was on the ship and directing everything that goes along with the ship. And I go, well, that's kind of cool. We might be able to kind of play off of that. Here's the type of ship they would be commanding. And that made me think of other things naval related, like signal flags. And so I took all of that kind of thinking as I moved forward and I started sketching out ideas, and it led to this branding for the Commodore Fund. So I used an actual Commodore type figure. He's steering the ship. The banners kind of reflect that signal flag idea, but the shape of them reflects the stern of the boat, and he's commanding your financial future and directing you where to go is kind of the meaning behind this. We created a secondary graphic to use in the collateral, and this is a shape association of the letter C for Commodore Fund. So a lot of ways you can handle this. Here's a company that does food cafes for colleges and universities. And one of the stations they wanted to develop would be for wings. And so they gave us the name Wing Nation. So if you think like conceptual map, you have the name, chicken wing, buffalo wing, chicken, and the United States, since they're using the term nation. And we came up with this graphic to brand that food station within a food court. So not difficult tactics. Anybody can do this. So let's move on to method 4. What does Frank say? This one's a little interesting. This Justin Aaron's good friend of mine, creative director of Rule 29. And he says, we look at all of our ideas from each designer's perspective and see if it can take a piece from one design direction and apply it to another design direction to make it better overall. Historically, this has often been viewed as Frankensteining. Justin goes on to say, I know designers get frustrated when clients Frankenstein our ideas, but as a team, we should always be looking at our development to see if we can combine ideas and evolve them into stronger ideas. At times, we're too close to our own work, so looking at other ideas objectively, recognizing their strengths could make for a better idea if we combine both of them. So I thought that was a pretty practical way. So when you're working on ideas, if you have a team working on it, just consider, what does Frank say? Design thinking method 5, time to play. Here's a great example of approaching your job with a playful mindset. This is Emily. She's an author and designer. And right now, not so much she's doing this live because of COVID, obviously, but she does live sketchnoting where she'll go to corporate meetings, set up her whiteboard, and as they're talking through whatever the genre or theme is of that discussion, she's capturing all of it. And she's live drawing the notes, basically, that illustrate all the points being made. And I've watched her do this, and I'm like, just, okay, I'd be lost. I wouldn't be able to do this, basically. And it's really cool because those people, it's usually non-creative contexts, although she's done it at creative venues as well. But people will go up and just take pictures of her board because it's easier for them to remember all the points, because the way she captures them is such a great way for capturing ideas and holding on to them. And I like what she says about drawing. I strongly believe it. I feel strongly about the importance of drawing skills as part of the creative process, and it's a skill that sets you apart from a lot of people. I personally feel that I can iterate more quickly on paper than I ever could on a pencil, and I tend to agree with that. Now, what I want to show you next is just a really short video, but it shows how you can use play rather than doing a lecture. And hopefully this works, because I've had a little issue when I've done this live, but I think it will.
Vaughn, I don't think we're getting any sound on our end.
So I thought that was a really interesting way to just use creativity as the kind of the center of attention to let employees, creative or not, work together in a different way. So this is a great quote from Plato. You can learn more about a person in an hour of play than you can from a lifetime of conversation. I thought that was pretty clever. Einstein is full of great quotes, but my favorite of his is play is the highest form of research. And I couldn't agree more with this. So you have a job you do every day. You always want to make time for your own creative pursuits, for no other reason than being creative. It can be anything you want to do. It's a great habit to get into, because it's going to bleed back into your work, and you're going to find ways you can use it in your work. So that's why I encourage you to take time to play. The next one I want to show you, design thinking method, is a little irreverent, but still very appropriate, and that is leverage bullshit. Now, this comes from my friend Sean Ferguson. He's a creative director for a hospitality group that owns like 7 or 8 chains of restaurants. And he oversees pretty much everything: the marketing strategy, the photography, the photo shoots, the design, the branding. And he is one of the smartest creative guys I know. And he had this to say about this topic: bullshit. I find bullshit is a tremendously powerful creative weapon. Sometimes just saying something is enough to make it stick and give some conceptual street cred with the client. So, what does he mean by this? Well, I'm gonna explain it. Sean had a lawn and garden. This was before his working with this group, and he's running his own agency. He had a lawn and garden client named M&M Landscaping and Lawn Care. Boring name in a very crowded market, Sean said. Sean and his business partner started BSing with one another ridiculous things about how they could possibly expand on this brand. They came up with ideas like maybe a dandelion is part of the logo, chainsaws, moles, a crane fly mascot. He said this absurd discussion led them to their winning solution: a lawn gnome name. Now I'm going to mispronounce it. Lyman Lift Whistle. We gnomes know a thing or three about creating and protecting beautiful lawns. That's why we align ourselves with the expert lawn care professionals at M&M Landscaping and Lawn Care. Looking for the best, look for the gnome. So they created a whole backstory and narrative of how the worldwide lawn gnome community exclusively stands behind one brand, and that is his client, M&M Landscaping and Lawn Care. And so they worked it into the logo, and that's how they marketed the company. And it was really successful. So I thought that was a clever way to approach solving, in this case, the small business identity. So leverage bullshit. Now, when I was putting these slides together, the next one is a great way to deduce a solution and a direction to take. But it's all about unexpected connections. So I'm trying to, obviously with bullshit, I used a bull. I wasn't sure what to use for unexpected connections. And I saw this, I said, okay, that's funny. I'll just use that. So our next focus is Bill Gardner. You probably heard of Bill. He runs Gardner Design Group. He's also the author of the well-known Logo Lounge books. I think they're at number 12 now. and the site logolaunch.com. Bill is a great guy, good friend, and I interviewed him a few years back, and I asked him about how their team explores ideas and pushes them to try different things. And what I'm going to share with you next is the method they use. And my studio phone is ringing, so sorry about that. So this, what they do is they have a form they take, and once again, they first focus on the name, company, service, product, topic, or theme. In this case, let's say nature. And then they figure out the categories to align with this theme. And so those categories might be plants or animals or industry, geography, culture, or color. And then this is where the kind of part of the randomness comes in, is they take each of those categories and they write down keywords that align with that specific category. So let's say it's plants, they'd put leaf, tree, roots, flowers, vines, or fruit, whatever they want in these. They would do that for all the other categories. And then this is where the random unexpected connections come in, is they literally take actually not 2 dice, but 1 dice, and they roll it for each column, and whatever number they came up with, that designer has to create an exploration with all those associations embedded in it. And he's telling me this, I'm going, come on, you're just BSing me. You're just making this up, right? And he goes, no, it's like, we don't hardly ever use any of them, but there's always a moment where we go, well, that's interesting. I would have never have thought of that. And that's why they do it. So I tried this myself, and this is exactly what I got here. These are the words I picked, and I rolled the dice. And so I had to create something with a leaf, an owl, high tech, mountains, coffee, and red was the color. And I came up with this. I was like, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So there's some merit to it. And Bill goes on to say, we'll roll a die for each column to randomly select a group of words. Then we try to force these random elements together into a design that would have never considered otherwise. Now, obviously, you'd pick the theme associated with your project, not just a random thing. It helps to break the tension and allows us to see some great unexpected solutions that could give us a new perspective. So once again, it's all about mining ideas, finding that unexpected idea that you probably wouldn't have thought of. It helps you get to that gamma level of thinking. At this stage of the creative process, rabbit trails should be embraced. Don't overthink it. Just start moving down anything that comes up that looks interesting and see where it leads. You can always determine if, okay, that's not a great direction. You go back and you start rethinking in another way. So start hunting for those unexpected connections. We're going to go to design thinking method 8. And this is a simple one, before, during, and after. This was shared with me by my friend Jeff Pollard. He's a designer, and now he's actually an actor and a voice actor as well. He's done a lot of logos you've probably seen. Tiger Woods logos, one of the designs he created the NFL Hall of Fame logo, and many more. Really nice guy, quite a character, I should say. And he shared this tactic with me that I'll share with you now. And that is before, during, and after. Once again, it starts with the central theme. Maybe it's the company you're working for and their name. In this case, this was the example he gave me. He was going to work with a direct marketing company called Rain. And all about Rain is, their thinking behind it is letting it rain. You know, they want to help their clients to improve their marketing, improve their communications, so that it can rain and they can benefit from it. It's kind of the idea behind the name of this company. But he used before, during, and after. So you want to think about before, you want to think about during, and after. So in context of rain, what comes before rain? Well, clouds, if you think literally. What comes during rain? Well, rain comes during rain, but you could think of an umbrella. You would use an umbrella. Unless you live in Seattle, you don't use umbrellas. Only only scaredy cats use umbrellas up here in the Pacific Northwest. After, what comes after rain? Well, you're going to have puddles on the ground. And just by doing this simple little tactic, he discovered his solution to brand this direct marketing firm. It's fun, but it really kind of goes with the idea of what they do. They're not just so serious that it's all about we're going to make it rain for our client. They also want them to understand we're going to get you to that area where it's enjoyable. And I thought this was a great, simple way to approach working through ideas. So you might want to consider this one as well. Let's go to the ninth one. This one's a bit more complex, but the guy sharing it is a bit more complex. His name is Stefan Mumwa. He's a good friend of mine, creative director at a really good agency in San Francisco called First Person. They create narratives and stories for clients to help them communicate with their audience. Pretty complex messaging challenges that they deal with. Of course, when I ask him, he knows me, so he likes to get all clever. And so this is a tongue twister reading this. Most design is meant to communicate something to someone. So we need to break down the something and break down the someone to figure out what part of the something is most wanted by someone. So I go, okay, well, thanks for that. But I'm going to show you what he shared with me. I actually saw him do a talk on this at Chapman University, and it was pretty cool. So I want to share that with you now. And so all it comes down to is isolating the something and then figuring out the someone. So once again, start with that theme: company, product, service, etc. So what would the something be here? In this context, we're going to make it Jeep, the vehicle. And so you might be thinking, okay, what are the personality traits of Jeep? Well, they market themselves as an outdoors vehicle. They have adventure as part of their narrative, and they're four-wheel drive. So what's the someone? In this case, the someone is actually Stefan himself. Now, I'll tell you right now, Stefan is about 6'8", really tall. And so he wouldn't fit too well in a Prius, let's say. So what's his loves? Well, he likes having options. He likes being spontaneous and creativity. He's a creative guy, creative thinker. And what are his fears? Well, lack of control, confined spaces, hence the aforementioned Prius, and he doesn't camp. And this is where the oddity of this methodology comes in, because as Stefan explained to me, Jeep positions its brand by implying that their vehicle is geared for the outdoorsman, the adventurer, those who offload and spend a lot of time in nature, camping, backpacking, etc. The audience, however, the actual people who buy Jeep and make up the majority of the owners of Jeeps, don't participate in the lifestyle on a regular basis. So when Stefan's fears came up, as Stefan told me, he doesn't like confined spaces. So that is one reason he chose a soft top Jeep. It has more headroom for him. And he doesn't camp. The converging connections in this example show that Jeep's message, in all practicality, isn't as relevant to the greater audience it could be. This is what he does all the time to expose these type of things and explain them to these companies. And they would improve their strategic communication, reaching out to a wider audience. So this is kind of complex, but it can be applied on a smaller level as well, by just breaking it down into these two simple things. And Stefan would do a much better job explaining it. So hopefully you understand what I was trying to communicate there. So converging insights, take into consideration the something and the someone, and you might be able to gain more insight. So let's jump to the design thinking method 10, inspiration boards. Some people might refer to them as mood boards, used all the time in context of ad agencies. I deal with mood boards a lot when I'm working with agencies. They usually send me a PDF of a mood board or a brand positioning document, and that's what I work from to kind of frame in my thinking. This is Patricia Zapata, a really great art director and an illustrator based down in Texas. Besides her full-time job of being an art director, she does this incredible paper craft on another side of hers, which is amazing as well. But she shared a method of using idea boards like this, or mood boards, whichever the term you prefer. I collect photos or images and place them on a tabloid-sized board. I move them on and off the board as they work or don't work. It's like shuffling cards on a tabletop. A concept slowly builds. If I'm lucky, the look and feel creeps in as well. Even though many images may not work, they lead me somewhere unexpected. I know that I wouldn't have gotten there without these discarded images. It's often said that what writing is really all about is editing. It's about after you edit is what you get that most people read. The same is true in the way you think, the way you problem solve, and in this case, the way you edit out photos to achieve something that you probably wouldn't have gotten to unless you did that. So it also demonstrates you have to work through the bad to get to the good. If you just only try to come up with good ideas, it's like being in a car stuck in mud. You're going to be spinning. So you want to let those bad ideas come about, think through them, throw them away, keep moving. So idea boards might be one way you can gather and curate images and use it within a team environment to kind of start asking everybody to figure out what do you think is a color or a styling or the general look and feel that we should go in. It's a great way to, the reason why advertising agencies have used it historically is because it works. So the next design thinking method is a really unique one. It's called the Magic Suitcase. And I have a friend based in Atlanta, Georgia, who's a really good designer and does a lot of branding. His name's Tom Cox. And he shared this concept with me, and it's what he literally does with his clients. I love his Rand Paul pose here in the photograph he did. To help my clients, he says, understand that their customers value an experience with their brand, I create an experience around the creative direction of their brand identity. And then he went on to explain to me, he actually uses something he put together called the Magic Suitcase. And this is it. It's an old kind of retro styled suitcase. And he's spray painted on it to kind of brand it of sorts. And what he does is he loads this with all kinds of ephemera. And it could be everything of like colors and typography, attitude, style, look and feel. He loads it with all kinds of things, and he brings it to a meeting. And with the team, he's the people that is he's working with to brand their company, service, or their product. And then he has it set out, and he lets them go through everything. And they have to curate their own individual set of items they feel reflect certain qualities that the brand should have. It might be color, it might be attitude, it might be the aesthetic that they're attracted to. And this is how he lets them kind of be part of the creative process. As they're doing this, he's writing down words and reflections that they're talking about, asking them questions. It's really interactive. I thought this was a brilliant way to handle it, because not all teams like to just sit back and wait for you to come up with ideas. They want to actively be part of it. And it's also a great way to kind of control that as well, because he decides what to put into the suitcase. So he only puts into the suitcase things that he strongly feels align with the direction they should go. But it's a great way to pull out different ideas you might not ever have thought about. So you might want to put together your own magic suitcase. Now, the last method I want to share with you is more about the real world. And this is an actual story that a guy by the name of David Lamelli I shared an office with when I worked at the company Upper Deck. And we were just talking about where we worked at previously. And he told me a story. Before he worked at Upper Deck, he was a art director for an agency on Hollywood Boulevard in California. Hollywood Boulevard is really close to the Walk of Fame where you have all the stars on the ground. Here's Godzilla. And at the time, at this agency he worked for, one of the accounts they had was AM/PM. And now this will kind of date this story, but this was before large format printing, meaning you couldn't print out something, 40 inches wide by 60 inches tall or anything like that. So they had to create all the signage marketing that would be outside of AM/PM restaurants. And the way they did it is they had to mock most of them up with colored film and cutting it out of X-Actos. They would get certain colored Xeroxes done and pasted up just to get the idea in place and create a physical mock-up. It might be something like this. Actually, David told me when he was telling me the story, he goes, yeah, 2 hot dogs, 99 cents. That was me, baby. So he would mock up something like this. He would drive to the local AM/PM, pull out a ladder, put it against the building, crawl up the ladder and slide the comp down into the frame, aluminum frames they have on the outside the building. He'd get on his cell phone, not smartphone, that kind of dates it right there. He would call the headquarters of AM/PM, and the CEO of AM/PM would jump in his limousine and drive by, and then he'd either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That was their approval system. So he was telling me one day he was going there to do the same thing. He puts the ladder up. He's at the top of the ladder. He's trying to slide it in. He gets it in. He's kind of looking at it, make sure it's straight. And the AM/PM was right next to an alley. And there was a retaining wall separating the two. And he looked over the retaining wall, and there was a homeless guy sitting next to the wall in the alley, looking up, watching him. And he just raises his thumb and says, looks good, man. And that was at the moment Dave told me he thought about getting a new job. So funny story. But when it comes to ideation, when it comes to working out ideas, and the point of telling you this story is that not every idea needs to be high concept. Some are pretty pedestrian, and you just want to do the best job you can. But what you want to avoid at all times is coming up with shallow ideas. Doesn't help. Actually, you'd never dive into a pool that's shallow, and I don't think you should dive into a project in a shallow way as well. So that's the real world, and that's several creative problem-solving tactics you can use in your own work, and I hope you enjoyed this.
Thank you, Vaughn, for that great session. Lots of great ideas, and some of that I think would be really great for professors to use in their classrooms as well as they're teaching students how to really think about design and concepting. We do have a question. Someone asked, does this exist in a book format?
In a book format? No, this is just a talk. I got asked to address, like, at the HOW conference a while back, how do you approach ideation? And like, I shared mine, but I was curious how other people approach it. So I just interviewed a lot of people who I admire what they do. And, and if you ever get curious, just try to contact somebody. Most people are pretty willing to to they don't hold that kind of stuff too close to the vest. Some do, but most people are willing to share. So I wouldn't consider me the best person to write something like that. I'd rather see somebody like Sam Harrison, who I've seen at design conferences talk about subjects. He's so great. And if you haven't heard of Sam Harrison, one of his best books that influenced me a lot was called Zing, Z-I-N-G exclamation mark. But just check out his books. You're going to love reading them. He talks about this type of thinking and solving creative problems all the time. He'd do a much better job than I ever would.
Well, a good thing is this session is being recorded, and we will share it out with everybody after this. And of course, I'll give you a copy as well, Vaughn. We do have another question. Do you think these different processes are more about finding what works best for you or finding what works best for a client? Like would some processes be better for certain types of clients?
Yeah, I think you're going to be able to determine what would be best for any type of client, but I would definitely gravitate towards those that it's all about facilitating yourself so you can take information that you normally get from a client, ask them insightful questions to elicit responses that they might not just would have shared normally. I think that's important. So whatever tactic you think aligns with your ability to think better is an obvious one. But for a client, I found, like when I do the creative brief, I try to ask them questions that force them to look at themselves outside the realm of their steering the ship. I want them to kind of view themselves from the standpoint of who they're trying to communicate with, because honestly, it doesn't matter if they like something. If it's not the best fit for an audience, then they should be smart enough to know they shouldn't go in that direction. That's a hard thing to convince them of, but I found following up with questions that one question I asked years ago to one client is her business was, she would literally drive around to all the surgery and medical facilities in town and deliver gloves, surgical gloves. That was her business. And the name of her business was really pedestrian. It's just her name .llc or something like that. And so one of the questions I asked her when I met with her is, what do your clients say about you? And it was much like FedEx, where when they first came out, it was Federal Express all written out. Well, nobody ever said that. The audience simplified it to FedEx, and eventually they rebranded using what the audience determined should be their name. It kind of worked this way with the small business, where she said, well, people refer to me as the glove mobile. As soon as they see me drive up in my van, they know the gloves are here. And I go, well, that's it. That should be your business name, not keep that as your corporate parent name and do a DBA with what your clients tell you. And she did, and she had a van, I think it was like baby blue, so we repainted it white, and we did a vehicle wrap that turned it in, since it's all medical related, we made it look like an ambulance, and the logo was like a red cross, but made of rubber gloves, basically. And we reversed the name, so like on an ambulance, it's backwards, so when you look in your mirror. And then we put a fake vehicle number on it to make it look like she had a fleet. So we put like 18, even though it's just her, and man, that was so successful for her for so many years until she totaled the van. And then it kind of ended, but it did work pretty well.
All right. Well, I think that's the end of the questions. Thank you so much for joining us. If anyone has any questions, of course, they can send it to me afterwards, and I can make sure to forward them. And we'll be sharing these videos. Our next session will be roundtables. So we'll end this session, and I'll start the next session to talk about roundtables, and then we'll actually do our roundtables. Just really quick, want to thank all of our sponsors again. Our platinum sponsors, Spectrum Reach and Nielsen. Gold sponsors, Q1 Media and New South Research. And our silver sponsors, WCOV Fox 20, International Paper, Lego Branders, Wilkins, Stamp, AL Metro 360, Davis Direct, and Baptist Health. So thank you guys, and we'll see you soon.